The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we're going to talk about Austin FC's big Sunday night win versus the LA Galaxy, and then we'll also preview the two matches this week against Colorado Rapids and Real Salt Lake. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I am very excited to talk about the Galaxy match this week. I think for once we had this whole run, right, of weeks where we're like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
How are we going to talk about this again? How are we going to find a new spin on disaster? So I'm excited about it, but I'm also interested, I guess, in our game experiences. I'll just start. So I had the fancy pants Texas Mutual seats in the fifth row and got to see the players walk out and stuff, which was.
So is this the only time this year that you've gotten to sit there?
It's the second time I've sat there.
Okay. They just rotated among employees who are interested in going. Is that how it works?
Yeah. We'll go. So that's the first time I've been in those seats. I've been in that section once, but it was in somebody else's seats. So it's the first time I've got to use ours. But I mean, it was cool. It was a good experience. The oddest thing about being there is you're right across from the opposing fans, and LA Galaxy brought a whole bunch of people, right?
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of drums, and sometimes it's because they're right across from you, and Lamurga and stuff is coming kind of from the side. It's distracting. It was like throwing my wife off completely because there were drums all over the place. Yeah,
where we sit, we're closer to the opposing fans than we are to the Murga. And so it's just the crossfire of drums playing different rhythms all night is a little bit disorienting at times.
But I mean, Murga was pretty awesome overall, I think.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And I think you had a family in town, and you had maybe a little bit of a unique fan experience at the match.
Yeah, my parents joined again. This is their third game that they've come to, and in the second half. So to backtrack a bit, we were at Hop Squad before the game, and my parents had met some of the folks in the soccer scene here, and they had met Katie Ensign before. And anybody who knows Katie Ensign knows that she tries to I'm trying to not use negative words because it's not a negative thing, but she tries to manipulate people to get more into Austin FC and into the supporters culture. And she was talking to my mom and planted that in her head that we should go down to the supporters section during the game. And so my mom, who was gung ho to do stuff like that, she's always looking for where the action is and where unique experiences are. And so I was like, yeah, you should definitely go. Depending on what the game looks like, I might go or I might not. And so the game was still 0-0 at halftime. And so my mom just went down there by herself, but Katie and Roma were down there, and they found her as she went into the section and took care of her and made sure she had a spot. And we're showing her oh, whenever the band does this, we do this little movement, and this is the words to this song. And so Katie and Roma took very good care of my mother, which I very much appreciate. But she had a blast. She got to be down in the supporter section when both goals were scored, and they were both scored on the end of the supporter section. And so, yeah, she had a blast down there, and as I think everyone did. But it was pretty cool to get to have her there and to let her experience that on such a fun night.
So she committed now for future matches to be support in the supporter section, or was that just a one-time experiment?
No, she didn't like how loud it was, and she said her earplugs kept falling out. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised if she did it was there during a half of every game she's at going forward. That's
awesome. Yeah, Katie winning fans and friends one fan at a time. Let's get into shirt talk a little bit. We've got a couple. Well, as of recording, a couple days left, but time works differently in the podcast world, so we are almost complete with shirt order pre-sales.
Yeah, that's right. So we extended our pre-sale until Wednesday the 29th, September 29th. And so if you want a Moon Tower Soccer shirt, get your order in before Wednesday. We're not going to print very many of these, so if you want one, order it now. And any shirt ordered between now and Wednesday, we're actually going to be donating $5 to Creative Action, which is an organization here in town that their aim is essentially to better people's lives through creative processes. And so Joel Corral, who designed our logo, did a project with them through Austin FC and was doing kind of like an art class for some kids there. And so we thought it was a good fit because Joel designed our logo. Joel has worked with Creative Action. So we're going to give $5 to Creative Action for every order that comes in until our pre-order is done.
That's great. Well, let's get into the 2-0 win over the LA Galaxy for Austin.
Yeah, let's do it. So goals were by Musa Djitte, his first goal in an Austin FC jersey, and then Oren McKenzie Gaines, the second. Round Rock native, his first. Was this his MLS debut? No, second game. He played a few. Wait, no,
this is his MLS debut, right? Because didn't he only play against Tigres?
I feel like he played. I don't know. I'm losing my mind. Anyway, this is the most minutes he's played. He played 20 minutes at the end of the game and got the second goal, which was a beauty. And as of right now, is winning the MLS account's Twitter vote for MLS Goal of the Week. Maybe due in part to the supporters groups kind of bombing that poll and juicing the stats a little, but it was a very good goal.
Twitter poll ballot stuffing is always encouraged, and I think it's something we've gotten pretty good at.
Oh yeah,
going back to preseason with some of the stuff with remember when the Dallas guy, I think we all voted. And
Nkosi Burgess was gonna dye his hair, and we took over that one. Yeah, but yeah, it was awesome game. The week leading up to this game was kind of interesting, wasn't it, Jeremiah? It felt like the team was on a bit of the offense, like kind of a charm offensive with the players and with Wolf, don't you think?
Yeah, that way all the way around. I really got the stick with us. We know things are bad. I mean, and we just come off a bad outing, but we're here for you. And yeah, there was that. All the way to they even announced like free food in the premium terrace at the Q2 for Saturday night to try to get some people to show up. So we saw a lot of that. This whole wolf in, wolf out, wolf thing after the last game particularly. And so I think it was the next day, like the Josh Wolf giving an impassioned motivational speech at training came out that on the Austin FC Twitter account.
Yeah, one of those like promo videos they've been putting out during the week of games.
And then after that, like Brad Stuver made me like literally cry when that, and maybe, I don't know if it was all Brad. I'm assuming he got a little bit of help from it, but that was what, Wednesday?
I think Wednesday when, Brad's letter to Austin came out, which was, absolutely beautiful. You wouldn't expect anything less from King Bradley.
It was so good. And it reminded me a little bit back to the great Twitter wars of 2017 or whatever. Remember the Columbus Crew fans made that awful like Dear Austin video about how like Austin, you can have a team, but it shouldn't be this way. So I thought it was beautiful that Brad Stuver, the opening line was Dear Austin in that letter. And it was a much more impressive and meaningful letter than what we got. And, I guess that's sort of all the things he said came to light out of it. And if you haven't read it, we'll put it in the show notes. I mean, I highly encourage you to read it. It was spectacular and what you would expect out of Brad Stuver. And then beyond that, then we had a little McConaughey started popping up again after he sort of showed up at the first game and then disappeared for a while. We saw him on social media, and he's actually doing on Tuesday night doing another Meet the Supporters call for people.
Oh, is he? I hadn't heard about that yet.
If you have tickets in the supporters section, you've got an invite to sit in on a Matthew McConaughey call. So I don't know if he will be wearing a shirt or not. But my wife said that was like what was going to make her decide whether she wanted to watch it with me or not. It was if he did that again. But yeah, he's going to be on tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see like what he talks about, what kind of questions he gets.
So I think we have time to get into this. We don't have a ton to talk about today, but the Austin FC accounts were kind of posting McConaughey stuff and talking about Minister of Culture, blah, 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 blah. And some people kind of took offense to that because he hasn't been at any of the games since that first one. And I think that's kind of a fair shout from the fans. Like, if you want to call him the Minister of Culture, fair enough, but he should be a part of the culture if he's going to do that. If they're going to like fly that title out over and over. Like, I don't know. I don't think anybody was upset about it, that upset about it, until they start publicizing him as the minister of culture. And it's like, okay, well, if we're gonna have a minister of culture, maybe it should be like Rigo Rodriguez or something.
Right. Or I saw the one tweet that had Tiny Sebastian is the minister.
Oh,
like,
yeah, there you go.
He's the perfect minister of culture. Like he is the face of Austin FC now. When we were at the game, that's my wife. That's the first game she had been to, and she wanted to see Tiny Sebastian and she wanted to see Fatima, and then she like didn't care about almost anything else. So I'm glad that we got that going. But yeah, I mean, I think that's fair criticism. You know, I think people expected a little bit more involvement.
I also think it's fair for him not to be at every game. He's a busy man. He's probably working and like doing whatever he wants. He can, but he's generally a busy man. I imagine actors and people in the film industry are probably trying to make up on some work that they lost over the last couple of years from the pandemic. So that's fine. I'm not mad at him for not being there, but if the club is going to push him being the minister of culture while he's not being there, I think that is something that is it's warranted if fans want to be upset about that, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then the other, on the Josh Wolf front, the other thing we saw is he did a two-parter with Chris Bills, which I think was the first time he'd like sat down with Chris Bills for a long form interview.
Since Chris was saying it was the first time he had done it since 2019 when Wolf was hired.
Oh, when he was
Chris
hired.
got
Gotcha.
to sit down with him like that week when he was hired. And that's the last time Chris Bills has gotten to do it, mainly because of COVID. I mean, it made stuff like that more complicated, but yeah, Chris got to go sit down with him in person and just do kind of a long form interview. And Chris has written a couple of stories out of that interview, and they're excellent. So I feel like we don't do this enough, but go subscribe to the Striker Texas. Like, this is the best. You're clearly an Austin FC fan if you're listening to this. The Striker Texas is putting out the best Austin FC content. So subscribe. Let Chris keep doing this as his job because he's very good at it, and you should support people who are doing the kind of work that Chris is doing, because yeah, these two articles, two stories that have come out from this interview are reason enough to do it. So yeah,
I thought they were exactly, and you get Phil too, and writing all the Phil stuff. Yeah, I thought they were good pieces, and we don't probably have the time or the need to dig into them too much. But I thought the first one was really kind of about, you know, the season itself, and I thought showed some self-reflection and growth in Josh that I appreciated seeing. And the second one, I think was largely sort of focused on the injuries, and talked a lot about Danny Houston and whether or not he had a future in Austin beyond this year, which Josh Wolf at least seems to say that he will, which I was a little bit surprised by.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised by it, but like, I'm not upset about it, because just what we've seen from Djitte over the last couple of games, like, Danny Houston isn't going to be the starter anymore.
Right.
Like, but I don't mind having a guy like that on the bench. He's maybe making a little more than I would want someone on the bench to be making, but he's already here. He's learning the system. If Wolf is to be believed, he's still kind of a part of the locker room culture and is talking to the guys. So yeah, if he comes back, sure. I wouldn't want him to come back to be the only option and the main option to be striker. But if he sticks around, I'm not gonna riot about it. Yeah, because we have a Musa now.
Right. And yeah, we are definitely going to talk a lot about that. Yeah, I mean, salary wise, it's not my money, and it's not really costing us. There's no opportunities that we're losing out on, I think, because we're paying Danny Houston what we are at this point. At least.
Like, if we, let's say Aaron Schoenfeld leaves, Aaron Schoenfeld's not on much money. If we are not paying Danny Houston all the money we're paying him, we could pay someone else more money to fill this other roster spot. So there is some opportunity cost there, but I mean, it's not a ton. We're gonna have some spots to fill and some rotation in it, so it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if he stayed. I think I might still prefer he not stay, but I'm not going to be angry if he does.
That's fair. Okay, so lineup wise, you know, we knew we were going to be out Ring. We were out Besler again, so I thought we got the best 11 we could have, you know, on the field there. Is there any other pregame stuff you want to talk about before we get into the game itself?
Do we want to mention the Tifo real quick?
We should. Oh, speaking of
Yeah.
Joel Corral.
Yeah. Yeah, Joel Corral designed this beautiful Selena tifo for Hispanic Heritage Month, and it was amazing. If you're listening to this, I surely you've seen it by now. But if you haven't, take a look at it. There's a million videos and pictures, including on the Moon Tower Soccer accounts. Jeremiah and I were both able to get kind of different angles from the seats we were in. But Joel did an amazing job. It said "Somos del equipo de la 512." We're from the team from the 512, and it's a Selena song that they kind of adapted to fit those lyrics, and it was just really beautiful. And then me and Ashley went and helped paint one day, and I got to paint the green part that was like adjacent to Selena's butt, and to paint the like a background for Selena's butt is one of the greatest honors of my life. It was yeah, truly touching, but it looked awesome. It was so good. Yeah, I think that's all the pregame stuff. I think we can jump into the game now. So whenever that lineup came out, like they don't give you the actual positions of everyone. So I had no idea where anybody was going to be playing. My guess was a 4-2-3-1 with Diego and Danny playing as a double pivot in the middle, with Cecilio on the left, Driussi at the 10, Pochettino on the right, Djitte up top. I got it mostly right, but Pochettino ended up playing in the double pivot next to Danny, which Chris Bills had been tweeting about all week and asked Wolf about it in the press conference and was saying, like, maybe this is the way forward. Like, this is what needs to happen. And he looked great there. He was so good in that double pivot. And Danny Pereira had one of the best games, his best games of the season as well, in that double pivot next to each other. So we'll talk about rotation and stuff going forward. But I have been a Wolf defender, or at least a Wolf sympathizer throughout this season. I will be mad at Josh Wolf if we see Tomas Pochettino play anywhere else going forward.
Yeah, he did everything he needed to do. And especially I feel like in the first half, there were plenty of opportunities that he just shut down.
Yeah.
And he played aggressive, you know, and he ran a ton. And I thought it was one of the things that was interesting in the post-game press conference that I picked up on is, you know, Josh had a lot of praise about him. And one of the things he did talk about was how disciplined Pochettino was in this match, which is obviously very different from, was it the week before? Or
the week before, and then a few times throughout the season where he's straight up said, like, Tocho's not doing what he's supposed to.
And then I read some on Twitter, people saying that they saw him like directing like from the back too. And I didn't pick up on that, but I didn't pay that much attention to it, that he was like, you know, he's playing aggressively and then also being like that guiding force in between the back line and the midfield.
And just looked very comfortable as well. Looked really comfortable. One thing I would kind of want to get into, which is, I think I'm pretty bad at this, where I see something enough times, I just kind of take it for granted and assume everyone else is seeing the same thing that I'm seeing or knows the things that I'm thinking already. But Austin's defensive shape, we've been attacking in a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 for most of the season. But in defense for most of the season, I think early on we were still defending in a 4-3-3, but for most of the season, we've been defending in a 4-4-2. And Pochettino and Pereira, who I wouldn't have guessed that those two in the midfield would have been able to stop Dos Santos and Ravelis, the two Galaxy midfielders. I would have guessed that those midfielders would have marched right through those guys. And they did a great job of kind of shutting them down. So they did really well.
Yeah, so early on, I guess we can go from the lineup there. So early on in the match, I mean, LA Galaxy there was a lot of pressure on, especially early in the match. And I don't remember where it was, but pretty early, Chicharito had a really good opportunity. And Bradley Stuver, who had, I feel like, his best game in months, really made an early statement and got on a ball that was on Chicharito's foot that preserved the 0-0 tie at the time.
Yeah, LA did a good job of kind of chipping balls in over our back line, and guys were making good little runs. And yeah, Stuver made some really smart plays. There was one specifically that was in the first half where Djitte gets in behind and somebody chips the ball into Djitte. Djitte jumps up in the air and has his foot extended, and he kind of tries to lay the ball off to Chicharito. And in that moment, Stuver is kind of like facing up to Djitte, and as soon as he touches it, he dives out and snags the ball out of the air. And just to have the wherewithal and the awareness to know like that was what was going to happen, and I'm going to bait it and then go for the ball, like he was great. I think there was one mistake where he kind of spilled the ball in front of goal in the second half, and Cascante was able to get to it and clear it. But aside from that, I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, he had a really good match, and then he also saved a kid. Did you see that at the end? Yeah,
that was it. Brittany Flowers that
yes
tweeted about that. She said Bradley Stuver says, "Please don't arrest this kid."
Yeah, and I did notice that when it was going on. I was like, "There's a child on the field," and he like ran out to say hi to Stuver, and Stuver kind of grabbed him and waved off the security guards and walked the kid back. And I think he gave the kid his towel too.
Yeah.
And sent him back over the fence. So good job by King Bradley, who had an amazing week all the way around.
So going into halftime, my dad was still sitting with me. He didn't go down to the supporter section. He asked, "Would you take a draw at this point?" And I said, "Absolutely," because Elliott had too many good chances, and we didn't look bad ourselves. It was a really fun game. It was kind of back and forth and a lot of action going on, but. I told him, yeah, I'd take a draw right now because there's too many good chances for LA. Like it didn't feel like we were going to be able to keep them from scoring at that point in time. And in the second half, I mean, we ended up closing it out and we did keep them from scoring. I think LA probably could have been a bit more clinical and maybe should have finished some of those. But again, Stuver had a good game. Defenders had a overall pretty good game. I still have a few complaints about that, which we can get into a bit later. But yeah, then the two goals came. So 64th minute, Moussa Djitte scores off a rebound off of his own shot. I think one of the most impressive parts of that goal was him receiving the ball. Was it Driussi who played the ball into him? Like Diego kind of pinged a ball in as he was running in, and he didn't control it very well, and it popped up in the air. It falls back to Diego. I think he played it to Driussi, who plays it back into Jitte's feet, and the ball just sticks to it like a magnet. And he receives the ball, and at the same time turns towards goal, takes one touch, and just blasts it. And he hits the ball so hard, and so all the keeper can do is just get his body in the way, and so. It hits off of his hands, ricochets back out into the box, and Djitte follows up.
I was gonna say on that, like, because I just rewatched that a little while ago. Like his movement to get from, it was a quick little move because it didn't bounce like straight back to him. Like it spilled out, and he made a little kind of left hand turn and like back around the middle to get to the ball, which again was like incredible to see.
Yeah, and then a really clean finish, side foots it. It was a hard side foot, but a side foot into the top corner, and the keeper had no chance. But talking about his movement to receive that ball from Djitte, so he received the ball from Diego and it pops up into the air. As it goes to Djitte, he starts making a run into the box, and as the defender goes, he checks. He takes one step to the box, the defender goes, and he just checks back into the space that is left behind, and that's when Driussi finds him. And so just those little slight movements, and on the other side of the field was Chicharito, who's the king of those things, right? Like Chicharito's not an amazing athlete, not all that fast, but he's moves so smart. And whenever he gets the ball in those positions, he usually doesn't miss. And Djitte showed some of those characteristics, just subtle little movements, knowing exactly where to be, the ability to turn and get that shot off initially, and then to follow up his own shot and have that nose for where the ball was going to fall, and to get that second shot off was extremely encouraging. And I was very happy to see him get that goal, and then also just excited for what else he can do for this team.
And that was one of the loudest times I've ever been inside Q2 Stadium, I think, was when that goal went in. Because there was a lot of pent-up excitement, and a lot of because of Djitte, because of the streak, because of kind of how the game had gone. And I mean, people blew the roof off the place when that ball went in.
Yeah, I agree. I think that might have been the loudest, the loudest I've ever heard it.
So I want to ask about, so speaking of Chicharito, so we had this free kick like 4 minutes later that Austin had, and Chicharito's laying on the ground behind the little line that the referee had drawn. So explain to people who may not understand why there's a wall and a man laying on the ground behind the wall. Why did he do that?
Yeah, so you have your wall standing there, like the keeper, especially that close, you'll have 4 or 5 guys in the wall normally. The keeper will position that wall where he wants it to give him the most coverage, and he can be in a strategic spot to say, like, okay, if you're going to score in the goal behind the wall, you're going to have to get it up and over that wall. So often the wall will jump. You see occasionally, well, if guys scout or there's maybe guess lucky, they'll know that wall is going to jump, or will bet on the fact that that wall is going to jump, and they'll just play it on the ground and play it under the wall, and you have a wide open goal behind them because the keeper's usually cheating to the other side. So you see more and more in the last couple of years, teams will have a guy just lay down behind the wall there. And I think it's kind of cool that Chicharito's enough of a team player that he's like, I'll be the guy who lays down. I guess it's better than taking one off the face, but yeah, that's why he was doing it. But they were clearly doing it too close to the ball, which it took like a minute and a half to finally get that free kick off that ended up not being anything. But
there were 2 other things I liked about that free kick. One is, I don't know what Cecilio's hair was doing the whole night, but Cecilio was the one. I think he's got braids of some sort now, maybe. I haven't seen it in the wild.
The braids themselves look pretty cool. I'm a fan of the braid bit, but then it looks like maybe to get the braids, he had to straighten his hair, and he still just had like this wispy, weird ponytail hanging out the back. And we're used to seeing like Cecilio's mane flowing back there, right? And so the braids get a thumbs up from me. The weird little ponytail, 2 thumbs down.
2 thumbs down, yeah. Because he was the one, I think maybe Pochettino moved the ball or something, and Cecilio was the one that kept going back and forth and making sure that Chicharito was laying like far enough away from the spot to be. And then the other one is, you could hear like Ray Costello on his birthday, like talking trash to the keeper through his megaphone. Yeah, if you rewatch the broadcast, you can hear Ray like yelling at the keeper to like look at him and like just all kinds of stuff the whole minute, because the whole thing's kind of quiet. So I appreciated that moment too.
Oh, Ray. Listeners, if you don't know who Ray is, if you've ever heard on a broadcaster in the stadium the ba ba ba, that's Ray. Every time it's Ray, and you can hear it throughout the stadium, and it's amazing. So not long after that goal, I want to say around this. Well, it was not long after that goal, Djitte ends up coming off, right? Do you remember what minute that was?
Yeah, that was 70. It was 72 and 73. It was Gaines and Gallagher come on. Djitte and Cecilio come off, right?
Correct.
Those are the first subs, and Josh Wolf became a subbing genius too. Because they worked out. Tonight, because those or not tonight, but that night. But those are the only subs too, if I remember right. Is that correct?
I think so. If there was another one, it was very late, but I kind of think those were the only 2 the whole game.
Yes, they come on at 72 and 73, and then we get to see some Mackenzie Gaines action.
Yeah, so Driussi has the ball out wide, and I think it was Koulibaly, one of their center backs, is putting a lot of pressure on him. He ends up kind of losing the ball, but gets enough of a toe to kind of poke it out to the wing. Lima is rushing up that right side and is able to get on the end of it. So Lima rushes in. He puts a hard ball in to the box where I think maybe Diego had made a run, like a hard run at goal, which kind of opened up some space at the top of the box, and Gaines just kind of sat into that space. And so the ball arrives to him. He receives it, but the ball was hit really hard. And so I don't want to say it was like a perfect touch, but he did, I think, as good as you could have asked him to, because the ball popped. Instead of like popping, like bouncing straight back to where it came from or flying out, it kind of popped straight up and ended up setting up for a perfect volley for himself. And so he just turns and blasts it, and it goes more or less over the keeper's head. The keeper, it's hit hard if it goes over the keeper's head and still goes in. The keeper gets a hand on it above his head, and it just pushes the keeper's hand back and still goes in. And so I didn't realize how good of a goal this was in the moment. And I had to watch it back later that night as I got home, and I was like, whoa, that was a great goal. I kind of thought it was like I didn't realize like he kind of set it up to himself. I thought a defender had gotten a foot to it or something, and he was able to just kind of finish it in from there. Like kind of a trash can goal, but it was a great finish.
Yeah, and his turn on that ball, I mean, was beautiful. And there's something in this local boy done good Mackenzie Gaines thing. Yeah, so he ended up, like you said, currently in the lead, I think, on MLS Goal of the Week. And between those guys, and Djitte, was he on the bench for MLS Team of the Week or something too?
Yeah, he made the bench.
Yeah, he made the bench, so it's the man of the match. So yeah, it was definitely a maybe shows what can happen when we have a real number 9 and something of a forward backing him up. Because I cannot imagine Manny Perez making the play that Mackenzie Gaines did on that ball in the second half.
Yeah, let's get into some of the individual performances. We kind of talked a little bit about some of these. So Pochettino at the 6. Is there anything else we need to say about that, or have we covered most of it?
No, I think you covered it in saying he needs to play there forever. That
yeah,
he was good, and I don't remember exactly what it was. Somebody found some advanced stat on basically was it Chris Bills? It
was Chris Bills from
total goals created. Yeah,
American Soccer Analysis. I can't remember what that is called, but Analysis Evolved is the Twitter handle. But they do all kinds of weird stats. And was it interrupting? Is that what?
Goals? Yeah, goals interrupted is what he had done. I think that it talked about the effect you have on preventing goals. And so he had the highest total ex-goal performance in the club, but it was largely because of goals interrupted. So just again, he was almost perfect on the night. Yeah.
And Djitte, we talked about how good he was, but I kind of want to talk about what he is so good at. And so you've seen the man, you know how big he is. We've not had anybody on the team with that kind of frame to be able to do real hold up play, to be able to have a defender on his back. You just fizz the ball at his feet and it just sticks to him. And he's strong enough and has a good enough touch to be able to do that. And Djitte did this over and over and over last night. And so several times where the ball would fall to him, or it would get popped up into the air, and he would be able to just kind of push a defender out of the way or hold up a defender on his back and kind of run backwards with the ball until someone else was able to break open and he could spring them with a pass. But doing that was really, really good. His passing was really good. Just vision to be able to drop in, hold up a ball, and then hit a cross-field pass, or to find a guy. Just things that Cecilio wasn't able to do as well in those moments. And guys who were playing before, Gallagher surely wasn't going to do those things. But and then one thing that we still haven't gotten to see a lot of, but on the first shot that he took, his ability to turn quickly and hit the ball hard. He's got a cannon. He hits the ball so hard. And I can't wait until he scores one of those from outside and get to see the back of the net fly back as the ball hits it. That's going to be amazing the first time that happens.
Yeah, and he works really hard too. I mean, for a 9, it seems like he runs a lot.
Yeah. He was definitely useful in the press and did some tracking back when he needed to. So, and then also I wouldn't call him a speed demon. He's not hugely fast. I think once he gets to running, he's not slow by any means. He can move pretty quickly, but just knowing when to run and where to run, and the ability to kind of hold the defender off as the ball's coming. There was a few times in transition where he was really dangerous and provided that outlet when we needed it, and was able to at least hold it up for a little bit until someone else was there. But I love how he plays, and it's just amazing how much different Austin FC looks with him on the field.
Yeah, he and Driussi have really, I mean, maybe all those things that Claudio said that we believed about, waiting and finding the spots that need to be filled and getting the right players have come to pass, and it's obviously it's a little bit late for much to happen this year, unless they go on a crazy run. But I feel encouraged with the talent they've added over the summer about where we set up going into 2022.
Yeah. So one more player that I want to touch on just a little bit is Mackenzie Gaines. So I've seen some people already saying like, okay, now that we have two solid strikers, then like what else needs to like? And I was like, whoa, hold on a second. Is Mackenzie Gaines like? Do we know that he is definitely like a solid striker? Like, do you feel like we saw enough of that the other night to know that he's an excellent second option behind Djitte?
No, we don't even know if he's a striker. I mean, I think that was one of the things that it was on the press conference, maybe today, or maybe it was, I think it was today's, that somebody asked, when somebody asked about him, it's like, yeah, he's versatile and he can play in a lot of places. He's a forward for sure, but I don't feel like, I would not feel great, like, if, we were going to talk about squad rotation, if Mackenzie Gaines was our number 9 for 90 minutes, like, I don't feel like that is a particularly threatening lineup in a way that is if we got Moussa Djitte for most or all of the game.
Yeah, and it's not that I just don't know. Like, we didn't see enough. I watched the game back this afternoon, and he didn't really do a lot. Like, he wasn't very involved. Whenever him and Gallagher came on, their main role was just to run a lot and to be a nuisance to LA as they were trying to play out of the back. And they were great at that. They did an excellent job at that. But in the beginning of a game, when you're not up 2-0, it's not necessarily all you need your striker to do. So the goal was amazing, very promising. I hope he can do that more, but I haven't seen enough for me to be completely comfortable that if Djitte can't go for whatever reason, that, oh, don't worry, Gaines is going to step in and do it. Again, I hope he can. I just haven't seen enough to have faith that he will.
Yeah, I feel the same about him. And so let's talk about the stats wise. Let's talk about possession. I guess let's just talk about the way we played, right? Because usually we're a possession based team, right? We almost always win the possession game. And early, when the game was 0-0, I believe we were ahead in possession for a little bit, and we ended up, I think LA ended up like 60-40 to Austin. It's really 2 games in a row where we've scored a bunch of goals and been most dangerous when we're behind on possession.
Yeah, and I don't know that we were ever ahead in possession in this game. I think we were behind the whole game. And what was it? It was 60-40 at the end of the game, you said?
It was 60-40 at the end, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, I think a little bit was LA kind of forced our hand in that, but we are also just being a bit more direct, and direct, it's relative, more direct than we normally play. We weren't just lumping balls long and bouncing them off of Moose's head, hoping to win a second ball. It was still a bit more sophisticated than that. But there were times when you would maybe see us play a ball backwards, and instead we're like playing a first touch pass in behind the left back for a guy running on. And I think it was the movement was there, and guys were just running where they were supposed to be. The chemistry was there. You saw Danny and Pochettino just kind of always kind of floating around each other and being outlets for each other. And then the runs in behind from Diego, from Cecilio, and then Djitte dropping in and being able to hold up balls and being an option whenever there wasn't any others. They were just moving really well, and it was allowing us to just play a little faster than we normally would or normally try to.
Yeah, that was the thing I noticed, is the faster. Even when we would move the ball around the back a bit, there was less like a guy standing around with the ball on his foot, kind of waiting on people to move, and seemed like there was more direct action in the way we played on Sunday night than we have before for a while.
Yeah, definitely. A guy we didn't mention was Danny Pereira, and he was excellent. Just dribbling the ball. I feel like Pochettino did a bit more of the kind of more like basics, just like playing clean balls, winning tackles, things like that. Danny was showing some sauce out there. It was like dribbling guys and getting past dudes, and was creating options and creating space and creating dangerous moments by carrying the ball, which is a thing he's really good at. But I think against LA was maybe his best game of the entire season.
Yeah, they were really good together. So do you feel like there's anything specific to the way that LA Galaxy plays that leads to that, or did we just really have a great game all the way around?
I don't know. Like, I didn't notice them like necessarily even being deficient in any area, because they have a good midfield. And I don't know. I don't know exactly what it was. And I think a lot of it was just Austin playing really well and just kind of being really connected in the things they were trying to do.
We should take more of that in the future. I think if we could just replicate this game, and I do think Stuver, early on, the way we withstood the pressure, and a couple of those plays he made early on were really helpful in that, like, we didn't get the goal that put us behind, that left us trying to chase the game and playing the way that we were going to play. And then the center backs, they never really seemed. We did not get that mistake that we've seen out of either Romagna or Cascante that we have sometimes. They played. They did well under pressure. They sort of played their game. They stayed in good spaces. They made good decisions. I mean, we did miss like Romagna's lumbering runs up the field, behind, which I love, but probably aren't tactically great. But I thought they had really solid games too.
Yeah, so I hinted at this before, but I still feel like Romagna, he kind of switches off at moments. And some of those runs in behind that led to some like close distance shots on goal that Stuver ended up saving. I think a few of those are on Romagna. Romagna could have at least given a bit more grief to the guys that were running through there. But I think that's the biggest part of his game. If he's locked on with a guy one-on-one, the guy has the ball, he's a beast. He's as good as anybody in the league in that moment. Just like bullying a guy, trying to take the ball off of him. When he's backside and it's having to track runners, the ball's moving away from the field, that's when he kind of switches off. And that was my biggest fear in this game, with a guy like Chicharito on the field who moves so well. In those moments where Romagna's backside with Chicharito on his shoulder. And there were a few moments that it could have cost us, and it ended up not, just because of us, maybe a combination of lack of execution by LA and good performance from Stuver, that it didn't cost us. But there's that small deficiency, not even small, it's a pretty big deficiency in Romagna's game that he's getting better at. But it's still there, and it will likely cost us more goals going forward. I'm just hoping that he can improve that part, because if he can improve that part of his game, he will be a monster. He's going to be so good in this league.
Yeah, and he's so young. I mean, you would think. I mean, he's young in the league. I mean, he's pretty young overall too, especially for a central defender.
Yeah,
so
just
you
turned
think that
23. Is that right?
23. Yeah. So you think that's the kind of stuff he can work on. So, all right. So week ahead, we got 2 games. We still have no Besler. Do you want to? So Nick Martin, Twitter fan and friend, who's always gives us a hard time about not mentioning them, although he doesn't like ever send anything, has now become our concussion expert, I think. So he gave us some info on sort of Besler and concussion protocol and where we might be. Yeah, it was actually helpful this week.
For background, Nick coaches high school soccer, right?
He does, yes.
He has a little bit of background with concussion protocol. And so he was saying for high school at least, it's essentially, there's no like normal timeline. It's individual basis. And so you need to get a clearance from a doctor to even start doing any activity. And then once you get that clearance, you start off essentially on an exercise bike for an hour. You do that, you check for symptoms, and then that's it. You don't push yourself any harder. And it's just this very slow progression back up to full steam ahead. And I think even that part of it can take a long time, and there's no real like tape measure you can use on it. It's just individual basis, and you'll just kind of have to play it by ear.
Yeah, the other thing that he said was like, and then if you fail, you kind of start all over again. And I feel like we heard a little bit of that in the Wolf press conference today when talking about Besler, but to basically say for sure not Wednesday, and quite likely not Saturday also, which leads me to believe that he's not progressed super far along in terms of the things you need to do to make it through concussion protocol. So now that we know a little bit more about Besler being out and know that we have 3 games in 7 days, we need to sort of speculate on lineups and preview those. But before that, let's go ahead and take a break.
Yeah, let's take a quick break. We'll be back and talk about those rotations, and then we'll also get to the Colorado and RSL previews. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fvf.law.
All right, it's time to talk about hot sauce.
Let's do it.
Teardrop Pepper Company hot sauce is the hot sauce that we're going to talk about because that's the hot sauce we talk about. Teardrop has finally created the perfect recipe right here in Austin, Texas. Their all-natural, award-winning hot sauce has a delicious blend of flavor and heat, enhancing your favorite foods and leaving you wanting more.
Whether you like the zesty kick of golden habanero or garlicky smoothness of supreme serrano, it's the best way to spice up your Austin FC pre-match meals. Teardrop Pepper Company has 2 unique flavors, and you can order them from their website, teardroppepperco.com, or from their social media pages. And I told you a couple of weeks ago that my parents were here for a game then, and my dad got to try some of the hot sauce, and he likes spicy food, and so he tried them. He ended up ordering himself some of the golden habanero, and my mom called me the other day and told him, like, oh, we ordered some hot sauce, and we already got confirmation that it's shipping. It's going to be here super fast. And then she realized that she forgot to use the offer code for us. And so I was like, well, I'm glad you ordered it, but we're not going to get credit for it. So she followed up and sent an email to the folks over at Teardrop and let them know, like, I don't care about the discount, but I want you to know that I'm ordering this because of Moon Tower Soccer. So thank you, Phil and Sydney, my dear parents, for doing that, because that's how Teardrop knows that these ads are working and that people are buying more hot sauce because of our endorsement of them. So if you would like to buy some of this wonderful hot sauce, you can use the code GOAL, GOAL, and save 10% off your order. And that's either at teardroppepperco.com or on their social media pages. You can put it on everything because they'll make more. All right, we are back, and we're going to talk about some of the rotation that Josh Wolf is going to have to do over the next week with 2 games coming up, a game on Wednesday, a game on Saturday. Let's start on the back line. So without Besler, we don't think Besler is going to be available for either of these games. Who are we going to see on the back line?
Well, we've seen a whole lot of Cascante and Romagna, and I think we have to expect some amount of rotation there, either for Wednesday or Saturday. I mean, then we've got 3 kind of choices for those spots. We've got Freddie Kleeman, and I don't remember if he started a game or not yet, but
I don't think he started a single game. He's come in for pretty limited minutes up to this point, and only a couple of times, really.
Yeah, so we haven't seen a ton of him, and the other ones are people who are not naturally center backs, but are skilled defenders, and that's Alex Ring and Nick Lima. So did what Wolf mention them as one point as possibilities to play center back?
It was in the midweek press conference last week. So leading up to the LA Galaxy game, he was talking about the rotation that he was gonna have to do for this week, and he did mention them by name. He was like, "Yeah, we've got Freddie on the bench who, kind of said, like, didn't outright say it, but kind of said, like, maybe Kleeman's not ready to go, like, right now, just because of the step up from college into this game. Like, it was clear to me that he didn't really think that Kleeman is ready to do that at this point. But then mentioned Alex Ring and Nick Lima by name as people who might have to get minutes at center back, depending on what the 2 main guys can do. But he did say, like, Johan and Julio can't play 90 minutes 3 times in 7 days. Like, it can't happen. So somebody else is going to have to get some minutes there, and we'll just kind of have to see who those are going to be. But we might get to see some non-center backs playing center backs at some point in the next few days.
And we've seen a little bit of Nick Lima there for at least a few minutes already, right? I mean, I feel like he'd be a pretty good center back, honestly.
I do too. Yeah, he's not the tallest, but he's a really good athlete. He's strong. He jumps well. So I think there might be just some positional things that he wouldn't be used to just because he's not playing there a lot. But honestly, I think in a different team with like some different players, I think Lima could be a really strong player as like the right center back in a back 3. and like kind of being able to push forward a little bit and still carry the ball, but he's got the speed, he's got the strength to still track back and be a really good defender. So I would be just concerned about him being used to playing there. But as far as the skill set, I think he would be just fine. Where else do we think we're gonna have to see rotation? I mean, looking up front, we're gonna have to rotate some of those guys as well. So let's talk about in the midfield that double pivot. So we can't play Pochettino and Pereira 90 minutes every game either, but we also have Alex Ring coming back from his red card suspension. And so who do you think, like, what are the different combinations you think we could see in those two spots?
And that's where I don't see Ring being like a reasonable option at center back because of that, because you need rotation in a lot of places. This is what we talk about with Alex Ring a lot, right? Is he can do so many things, and we have a lot of gaps that we cover. So I would think, my guess is on Wednesday, Ring comes back and Ring starts. He plays with Pochettino, and Danny Pereira gets Wednesday off, and then Pereira starts the game on Saturday. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think we're going to see some kind of combination of that with Alex Ring probably getting a lot of minutes in these next two games and rotating Pereira and Pochettino in the other spot next to him, just because they did play. I think they played 90 the other night, right?
They did.
So,
yep.
So to give them some rest, and then they can sub on for each other, and you're still kind of getting that continuity playing in that same spot, but you have a fresh Ring coming back who can step in to the other spot there.
And then that takes us to the forwards. So who do you think's most likely to see some time to rotate out there, I guess, from among the guys who normally start?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel too bad about that area. I mean, I feel pretty good about Gallagher. His last few performances have been pretty strong, so I wouldn't be mad about him starting either for Diego or Cecilio in one of these upcoming games. And even if he doesn't play, if he plays 60 and they put on one of the other guys, I think he can do a good enough job to fill that gap. One of the spots I am a little concerned about is for Driussi. We don't have another player who does what he does, and haven't really played anybody else as a true 10 for the rest of the season, really. I think we saw Pochettino there a little bit, but whenever we haven't had him on the field, it's mostly been like a 4-3-3 without a real 10 there. So that's the one spot I don't really know what they're going to do.
Yeah, that one's going to be definitely tough. Yeah, I don't know what Djitte looks like when he's got Cecilio and Diego beside him, or Gallagher, or whatever that combination looks like. And you'd think we might see a little more Jared Stroud over this week too, because he hasn't played a ton lately. I don't see him starting, but I mean, he's got run at guys and cause trouble late in games, ability that I think he could bring to the table and help out a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like with the increased depth up top, a lot of times it's going to be like a Stroud or Gallagher option. And for me, I'm choosing Gallagher every time in that scenario. And from what we've seen lately, I kind of feel like
Josh Wolf
feels
is too.
The same way. Yeah. And so, yeah, I would imagine Stroud might get some minutes in these next couple of games, even if it's just at the end to kind of be that boost of energy. But I think Gallagher is just a little bit more technical than he is, and is a little bit more dangerous going forward. Whereas Stroud is a little bit one note in his attack. He's fast, works super hard, but he's got that early cross that has been dangerous at times over the season. But when it comes to dribbling or kind of taking guys on, he's not really excelled at that throughout the season, and where Gallagher has at times. So I think we might see him some, but I would imagine Gallagher to take more of those minutes than him. And then I'd imagine with Djitte is not going to be able to play 90 for these games, but I bet he can go 60 or 45 in both of these games. And that might be an opportunity for Mackenzie Gaines to come in and get some more minutes and maybe prove me wrong and show me that he is a viable option for a solid second striker.
Yeah, I think he's our only option up there at this point, other than
Him and
Gallagher.
Cecilio.
Yeah, him and Cecilio. Yeah, and we know Cecilio's not been great there, and I think he has better places on the field where he can contribute and where he's going to need to, because he's got a pretty big minute load still too, even though he was one of the ones that came out. But I mean, he's got to have some wear on him after playing as many minutes as he has this year and all over the place.
He worked really hard in that game the other night as well. Another thing about Wolf's defensive system in that 4-4-2 is the fullbacks will stay pretty narrow when they can, which requires those wingers to get back and cover the wide play. And that was something that kind of concerned me about having Cecilio there, because he's shown at times this season that maybe he's like kind of hurt at the end of games, not being able to run as much as he is early in the games. And he was great last night. He was sprinting back, had some really good defensive plays, and was putting in that work. I'd say there's one or two times that he got caught upfield and didn't really sprint all the way back. But the rest of the game, I thought he did great and was working really hard. But he can't do that 3 games in a row. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Wolf does in those scenarios. And there are options, but I think they're not all amazing options. And managing that rotation is going to be really important to keep the optimal team on the field at all times.
Yeah, so let's talk about who we're going to play this week, because we're looking at 2 Western Conference teams, both sitting in playoff spots. The first one's on the road against the Colorado Rapids, who have, what did you say? They have not lost. They have not lost in 11 games, but they've drawn a lot of those, if that's right.
Correct. Yeah, not 11 games without a loss, but I think 6 of them are maybe 6 draws in a row, something like that. A lot of draws.
Yeah, it says five draws out of their last 6 is where they are. But they're third in the Western Conference, so they don't seem to have a lot of firepower. They lead the league they're second in the league in clean sheets, and second fewest goals allowed over the season. So if this is going to sound kind of weird with them being the team that's in third, but I think if I had to play sort of a rotational squad in one game and play our best 11 in the other, I'd almost rotate the guys in here in the first match, because Colorado doesn't seem as threatening offensively, and then you have them well rested for the second match. How do you approach? Would you approach it that way, or do you have a different idea?
I don't know. I mean, these are 2 teams who somewhat embarrassed us the last time we played them, right? So I don't think we should be taking either of them for granted and thinking they're going to be easy. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough. Honestly, I think you should maybe treat both of them the same and not do a complete line change and say this is the game we're going to throw and this is the game we're going to take seriously. I think we have enough depth at this point that you can take both of them seriously and rotate enough guys. And just, if you're smart about that rotation, you can play a pretty strong lineup against both teams.
So don't be Josh Wolf in Frisco. Okay. Got it. No, that's true. We were talking about that earlier. The fact that our guys were rotating in are Jimenez, Ring, Gallagher, and not Kakuta Mane and
right. It's just
Manny Perez. The quality of players that we can rotate in are guys that we're starting and have started a lot of matches.
Exactly. It's not just who is on the bench and has a pulse. Okay, you're up next. It's it's guys that we've intentionally started throughout the season that we have options to come off the bench now, which is, it's not a luxury Josh Wolf has had for most of the season. He's essentially just had to, if somebody can run for more than 20 minutes, okay, you're on next. And he just didn't have any other options. And it's pretty nice to have that depth at this point.
It is. So it's a fun stat. The only match that the Rapids have lost at home all year was to Austin FC back in April. Whoa. So that's maybe something on the good side. But yeah, it's definitely going to be tough. I mean, they play smart. They're disciplined. They're playing well. So it will not be an easy match. But we did not have a lot of hope going into the LA Galaxy match either, given where they were playing. So maybe we'll keep connecting and keep playing above where we sit in the table.
So tell us a little bit about RSL. What have they been looking like recently?
So RSL are seventh in the West. In the last five, they've won 3 and lost 2. They got crushed 6-1 against Portland over the weekend. So Krylock, I think I wrote his name down wrong. What's his name? Is it Damir?
Damir Krylock.
Damir Krylock is their leading scorer with 11 goals. So he's pretty high up in the league. And we've played them only once, and we played them on August 14th. That's where Bobby Wood scored a goal and then kissed a baby in the stands that we later
That's right.
learned was actually his baby was pretty great. And I think that was one of those games that was kind of a low point. But since then, they've had their coach leave, Freddie Juarez. And so tell the people where he went and what that story is.
Yeah, so you would think that a coach leaving in the middle of the season means he was fired, but he actually so it was kind of a row of dominoes falling. Atlanta United fired their coach. Seattle's assistant coach, Gonzalo Pineda, I think, goes to Atlanta to take over that head coaching job. Freddie Juarez, his contract is up at the end of the season, and they had not renewed it or told him what they were going to do with it this year. And so instead of waiting around to find out what this team, who has no owner and not any real direction at this point, instead of waiting around to find out if he's going to get fired at the end of the season, he's like, I'm just going to go be an assistant in Seattle, and I'll see y'all later. And so he leaves middle of the season to go take an assistant job in Seattle. So that leaves Pablo Mastroeni as their interim coach, who's an assistant before, has never been a head coach before. And so RSL, although not having a terrible season, is, as an organization, is a little bit rudderless right now, it seems.
Yeah, and what I looked up right before, and they got Mastroeni from Houston Dynamo in a very MLS move. They had to trade, I think it was GAM. I think they traded $50,000 in GAM to get an assistant coach during the offseason. But I guess it was good that they did that. And you mentioned them not having an owner. For the people who are new to MLS, this is like a saga that's been going on for a while. Do you have like a quick sketch of the Deloy Hansen?
Oh, man. As the story came out, apparently Deloy Hansen, who was the former owner of Real Salt Lake, it turns out he was just like a massive bigot and racist. And apparently a lot of people in that organization knew that for a long time. And it just, the story, it's kind of like the whole Me Too movement. It was just like people were afraid of losing their jobs or having their careers ended by speaking out. And then finally that dam kind of broke and enough came out that MLS essentially said, you can't, because it's a single entity thing, right? Like you don't actually own your team. You buy the rights to operate a team. And so MLS, because of that, they can tell Deloy Hansen, like, yeah, you don't get to own this team anymore. And so he gets to sell it and keep the profits of it. So he's going to be fine. But nobody has bought the team yet. And so they're essentially, I don't really know who's making decisions behind that. If somebody at the league is kind of pulling the strings there or what's happening. But RSL has been without an owner since before the season started, I believe.
Yeah, he sort of announced he was going to sell in September, and I think it was in January the league actually took over the sale process, and so he's not involved at all. And they're hoping to wrap it up this year. But you can see why it does seem odd that somebody would leave to go be an assistant coach. But if you're going to be one, Seattle's a good place to do it, and you can see with how much chaos RSL has why someone might want to do that.
All right. Anything else on those games before we move on?
No, let's go ahead and move on a little bit. I guess let's hear about your academy experience. This weekend too.
Yeah, so I went out to see the academy again for the second week in a row. I watched the U17 team play, and then so the team they were playing was from Louisiana. I think it's TDP Elite, 3 letters Elite, but they're from Louisiana, and they have a U16 team. And so what they did is they split those two teams, and actually like the kids who would qualify for U16, that didn't get a lot of time in the U17 game, they played them as well. But U17s ended up winning 2-0. And then some of the younger teams beat them like 7-0. I didn't get to see those games, but watching the U17s play, those kids are good, man. Like they struggled to score a goal. I think both goals were later in the second half, but They are possessing the ball, just kind of passing around. They've got a few players that I would not be surprised to see playing at Q2 in a couple of years. But they're still just playing like some non-MLS club teams at this point. I'm very interested to see what they're going to look like once they start playing some of this MLS competition. And last year they were keeping it all regional, so we really only got to see them against FC Dallas, Houston. We saw them. San Antonio's academy is strong. Solar in Dallas is strong. But a lot of the other teams were like smaller academies that aren't going to be as good a competition as MLS teams. This season, they're going to be playing against a lot of other MLS teams. So they're going to play, the Crew, they're going to play St. Louis's new academy. They're going to be playing some of these other established academies who have been around for years. And that's going to be the real test to see how good these players are, how good this team is. And so I can't wait for those games to start happening and just to kind of get a gauge of where Austin's academy stands right now.
Well, they're off to a good start. So the younger groups both won 7-0. So it doesn't seem like that was terribly competitive either at 13 or 14. But from what you're saying, I guess we probably shouldn't be surprised by that either. So this is at least 2 weeks in a row you've been out there. I don't know if you brought the bucket this time or not.
So the first week I was out there, they weren't letting people inside the fence. And so the bucket was very helpful to get a better vantage point. This time they let us just inside the fence. And so I didn't take the bucket in there because honestly, mainly because I would have been standing on a slope the whole time and the bucket wouldn't have stood upright. But I did have it in the car just in case I needed it.
Just in case you have any bucket-related emergencies that broke out. So I said, I mean, that's at the Performance Center too, right? Did you go up to St. David's to do that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
I actually after the 17s game, I went over to the Palmer Field, which is the one that has the big stands next to it, and it's the turf field. And so they're running two games at the same time. And I went up to the corner of the stands, and to my right is the turf field with the U14s playing. Over to my left, I could see the U16s playing on the grass field. And then straight ahead of me, I could see over the fence into the first team training session. And so it was really cool to see, like, I posted this on Twitter the other day, but just 2 years ago, there was a handful of like 13-year-olds, like 12 and 13-year-olds. And those are the only players wearing Austin FC badges. And to be in that moment, standing in those stands to say, okay, we've got 5 or 6 different levels of academy playing games today. The first team is training right there for their game tomorrow. And just, it's amazing to see like how far it's come, and a little bit encouraging just to know that like we're in a rough patch with the project right now, but the future is bright. There's going to be a lot more happening, and to see how good some of these kids look on the field, there's going to be a lot more talent coming through, and it's encouraging to see.
And we don't talk about those facilities a lot, but that's cool too, because when you were doing that also, you know, it was like you're at St. Stephen's, or you're at like the Round Rock Performance Center or wherever, and I just, you know, for them, that's something that the club did very intentionally, but for them to be like right there in that like amazing space, but also like training right next to the first team, I mean, that's got to be a real advantage to the academy.
Absolutely, yeah, and the facility is beautiful, and I think it's cleverly built as well. So like standing next to the grass field where the academy trains, there's like a breezeway that you can see through into the first team training pitch, and that part is like kind of walled off, and like they made it intentionally a little bit difficult to see into from anywhere else. But standing on the academy pitch in the right spot, you can see through that breezeway and see the first team training over there. And so like as the academy kids come out of their locker rooms or whatever, if you turn right and you're going to the academy pitch, but if you look to your left, you see the first team training over there. And I think that's a pretty clever way of setting it up.
Yeah, that's got to be motivating for them. So I would assume you'll probably be going to more games, so we'll get more reports out of that.
I want to see the advance. Maybe have we'll talk to Mauricio and Ryan about this at Austin FC, but I think it'd be fun to have maybe a coach or someone from the academy on and kind of give a state of the academy at some point in the near future.
Yeah, that would be great to hear. So I think you ready to wrap it up for the week?
I think so, yeah. Before we close, we want to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We also want to remind you to pre-order a Moon Tower Soccer shirt. If you want one of those, you can go to moontowersoccer.com and find the store icon, or you can go to store.moontowersoccer.com and find it there. And again, $5 of every order is going to go to creative action. If you want to continue the conversation, find us on Twitter at lviajero87 and at jbentley_ATX, and then at Moon Tower Soccer, both on Twitter and Instagram. We also like to encourage you to visit the Striker Texas website. Jeremiah, what should folks look for at the Striker Texas?
I think everybody should definitely read the 2-part Chris Bills interview that we mentioned earlier in the show that he had with Josh Wolf, and sort of get in the head of Josh Wolf. I think if you did read it before this weekend's game, read it again and see if, like, given the results, see if your impression of Josh Wolf's answers changed a little bit, because I feel like mine might have. But it's a good piece, and again, support the Striker Texas and the journalism that they're doing.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We will be back in 1 week with a new episode of Moon Tower Soccer, where we will review the Colorado and RSL matches and then cover any other news that happens. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.